morning, girls. How are you? I hope you've had a wonderful week. Go ahead and comment down below something fun you've done this week and a prayer request. Today's lesson is going to be on Esther. We're going to do Esther chapter 1 and 2 today, and then next week we're going to go through chapter 8. So we're going to begin the story of Esther's life in the Bible. And is Esther in the Old or New Testament? Hurry, hurry, hurry. Old. You are right. So we're going to look first in Esther 1:12. So chapter 1, verse 12. Just so you know kind of what was going on in the time of Esther, the Babylonians had carried away the Jewish people, and they are held as slaves. So the king's name was King Ahasuerus, and he had a queen named Vashti. And in verse 12, we're going to learn that Vashti did not do as the king asked her. So let's look at verse 12. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. So he commanded her to come to this feast, this party he was having, and she said no. And he got rid of her as queen. She was dismissed as queen. She's gone from the kingdom. Years later, King Ahasuerus is lonely, and he wants another queen. So he asked his people to go gather up all the unmarried women, and they would go through these steps and then come before the king, and he would pick one out of there, sort of like a beauty contest. In chapter 2, verse 5, we learn about a man named Mordecai. And Mordecai had a cousin named Esther. Her parents had died, and so Mordecai now was raising her as his own daughter. Now, Esther and Mordecai were Jews. Remember, they're supposed to be in slavery. They're not looked upon as the good people. At chapter 2, verse 7, it says, talking about Mordecai, and he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful. Does it sound like she may do good in this beauty contest? I think so. Whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. So like I said, he raised her as his own daughter. Verse 8, so it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together to Shushan the palace, to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought up also unto the king's house, to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. The first part of verse 9 says, and the maiden pleased him, it's talking about Esther, and she obtained kindness of him. So he automatically noticed Esther. Let's look at verse 10. Esther had not shown her people nor her kindred. That means that she has not said, hey, I'm a Jew, because she would have probably been killed. And she didn't do that because the last part of verse 10 says, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. So Mordecai is her cousin, but he's raising her, so it's like her dad. And he said, don't tell him. And so she didn't. She obeyed. Verse 11, and Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her. He was very concerned about her, and he wanted to make sure that she was safe. Now, the time came for the women to present themselves before the king officially, and they could have whatever they wanted, like certain extra things to wear, maybe some, like in our day, it might have been like they wore a hat and extra jewelry and bracelets and all these things. And Esther didn't take anything extra. And guess what? She still stood out, and the king noticed her above all the other women. Verse 17, and the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins. So he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Esther is now queen. Let's look at verse 20. Esther had not yet shown her kindred nor her people as Mordecai had charged her, for Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him. So Even though she's now married to King Ahasuerus, she hasn't yet told him that she's a Jew because Mordecai had warned her not to. Now, these last few verses in chapter 2 tell us a lot. So like I said earlier, Mordecai sat outside the gate and he was watching and he wanted to make sure that Esther was safe. And one day as he sat out there, he heard some people talking about wanting to kill King Ahasuerus. And guess what he did? He told Esther. And you know what she did? She told the king. And the king took these people and questioned them and found that they were guilty. So they were punished by death. So because Mordecai had sat out there watching Esther, making sure she's okay, he had heard some information that saved the king's life. Do you think that's going to make the king angry? Or do you think that's going to make the king even more in love with Esther? Yeah, he's going to really love and trust Esther, and she is a wonderful queen, still keeping the secret that she's a Jew. But next week, we're going to learn how all this unfolds into something huge. So our key points is God had a plan for Esther, and God was always with Esther. I'm sure she was very nervous and very scared, knowing that she was hiding the fact that she was a Jew from the king. But she did what she was supposed to do, and it's going to have huge rewards. And we're going to learn about it next week. I thank you girls for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.